comments, Henry?
Yeah, I think there's a tab, isn't there? Well, there's a button you click when it's about to go live streaming that the comments are disabled.
Okay, I'll
YouTube comments, Amanda.
Okay, I can't see that where I'm on the YouTube page. Perhaps Alice can have a look at that for me.
Yeah, don't worry.
Okay. Okay, Chairman, and you can ready to start. We are now live streaming on YouTube.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon and welcome to East Devon District Council's virtual Cabinet meeting on the 9th of June 2020. I am the Chair, Councillor Paul Arnott. I would also like to welcome anyone watching this meeting via the live streaming media or indeed catching up later. All participants here today are taking part remotely, and as well as being live streamed, the meeting is being recorded. So please bear this in mind throughout, and may I remind you to be careful with your language. May I also remind members that the Code of Conduct applies throughout this meeting. We also reserve the right to remove and disconnect any participant who is disrupting the meeting by whatever means. As this Cabinet meeting is dependent on internet connection and a power supply, in the event of a break in the internet connection or power cut, please bear with us as we try to reconnect. After 15 minutes, if we are not able to reconnect, we will have to consider the meeting adjourned and reconvene at a later date. Please check the committee page on our East Devon website for details. If you could please make sure all microphones are muted when you're not speaking to avoid any background noise levels. And if I can ask, please keep your points short and do not repeat points that have already been made. And obviously, please don't interrupt. If you wish to comment, please raise your electronic blue hand and wait to be called. All councillors have been sent the agenda for today's meeting. Any member of the public who wants to view the agenda can do so by visiting the website www.eastdevon.gov.uk. We will now start the meeting by doing a roll call of committee members here present. Can you please now unmute your microphone, and when you hear your name, please confirm by saying present. When you have confirmed you are present, please mute your microphone again. Amanda.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Arnott.
Present.
Councillor Ragg. Councillor Ragg? No, I'll come back to Councillor Ragg. Councillor Armstrong.
Present.
Councillor Bailey.
Present.
Councillor Heywood.
Present.
Councillor Young.
Present.
Councillor Ledger.
Present.
Councillor Miller.
Present.
Councillor Rickson.
Present.
Councillor Rowland.
Present.
And going back, Councillor Ragg, have you joined the meeting? No, it doesn't appear as though Councillor Ragg's at the meeting just yet. I haven't had any apologies, so I presume she'll probably try and join us as soon as possible. So back to you, Chairman. Thank you.
Paul, you're muted.
Thank you, Jack. Spot the deliberate mistake. I can confirm we are quorate today, and therefore we can continue through the agenda. Agenda item 1 is public speaking, and there are no members of the public registered to speak. Agenda item 2 is the minutes of the previous meeting, page 3 to 11 on your agenda today. If anyone has a comment on the set of minutes from the 4th of March 2020, please do this by raising your blue hand. If I have no blue hands raised, I will take this as an indication that you all agree the minutes of the previous meeting. So I'm just going to look for blue hands at the moment, and I can't see any raised. Thank you very much. Therefore, the minutes of the previous meeting are agreed. Agenda item 3. Over to Amanda, please, for apologies.
I have no apologies, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, I have a few apologies. I have an apology from Councillor Mike Allen. I have an apology from Simon Jupp MP. And I think that's all I have myself.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 4, declarations of interest, which will be done by roll call by Amanda.
Councillor Arnott.
Yes, I'd like to make a declaration. Having taken advice from the monitoring officer, I would like to declare a personal interest on item 7, as my wife has operated a B&B for the last 2 summers, but it is no more than this, as the decision is about implementing national policy and not determining individual applications. Thank you.
I can see Councillor Ragg has now joined us. Councillor Ragg, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Amanda. I was typing in the wrong ID.
Oh, don't worry, Eileen. I'm going through the declarations of interest. Do you have any?
No.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
None.
Councillor Bailey.
In the sense that the grant scheme may, affect many people that I know, I would propose that would be a personal interest, subject to any comments by the monitoring officer.
Thank you.
I haven't got any comments other than clarifying.
Councillor
Other than clarifying, it's personal because you know potential applicants.
Yes.
Oh,
Okay. Councillor Heywood.
Thank you. My declaration would be more or less the same. In some of the documents that have been circulated by officers, and indeed one by Mr. Jupp, there are businesses named in that who potentially would be recipients who I know fairly well. So it's not a pecuniary interest, it's simply just a personal interest that needs to be declared. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Young.
Personal interest as Councillor Paul Heywood and Councillor Jess Bailey.
Could you just repeat that though, Councillor Young? Actually tell me what it is.
Yeah, it's some of the applicants I know them personally.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ledger.
Sorry. The other members, I will know some of the applicants personally.
Thank you. Councillor Miller.
None.
Thank you. Councillor Rickson.
Personal rather than pecuniary.
And what is that, please, Councillor Rickson?
It's with regard to some of the applicants.
As in, you know them?
Yes.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Rowland.
Thank you. Only on a personal basis, in respect of also being a seat and town councillor and some of the applicants may be tenants of Luton Town Council at the Marshland Centre.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amanda. So with that item done, we move on to agenda item 5, which is matters of urgency. Well, there is one matter of urgency which we're going to discuss at agenda item 7, Local Authority Discretionary Grants Fund. And we'll move on to that in a moment. Agenda item 6 is confidential or exempt items, and there are no confidential or exempt items which officers recommend should be dealt with in this way today. And so moving on to today's main item, agenda item 7, the Local Authority Discretionary Grants Fund. We are very grateful indeed for a huge amount of work that has been done by our officers on this in the last few weeks. And I'm very pleased, therefore, to introduce a report from the Service Lead for Growth, Development and Prosperity East of Exeter project, Andy Wood, to tell us more.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
3 hands are up, and I suspect that declares interest from non-cabinet members.
I thank you, Mike. I believe that isn't necessary at cabinet, but Henry, would you like to advise?
Probably not, because they're not the decision makers, but if you want to take them anyway, then they can at least be recorded, but we wouldn't normally require them.
I'm not minded to have to, but Mike, would you feel anxious if we don't take your declaration of interest?
I mean, it's up to you guys fundamentally, but I just feel before I speak, because I'm probably going to speak on this item, to make the declaration, as I've spoken to other people, that I have received money from East Devon for the previous grant scheme, and as such, I have a personal interest because of that. It is as simple as that, and I believe many other councillors are the same.
Thank you, Mike. Noted. So I can see, where are we? I can see Eleanor Rylance and Andrew Moulding. Eleanor, would you like to come in at this point?
Thank you, Leader. If we're inviting declarations of interest from non-cabinet members, then I would also like to declare an interest in that I also was a recipient in the last grant scheme. Thank you. Thank you very much. And Councillor Moulding?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm the same, that there are a number of personal interests I would have for people who have been mentioned, but I would also like to declare interest in those applications that I've been involved in, which are for Cloakham Lawn Sports Centre, Axminster Heritage Limited, Arc Axminster, Virtue and Honour Lodge Axminster, and also mentioned in the report are the Country Market at the Masonic Hall, and Jim Rowe, who is the Lord of the Manor of Axminster, who is also a personal friend and a Freemason, which I am also a Freemason. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Moulding, for that. I'm just looking for any other blue hands.
Councillor Arnott, Mike, I haven't got my hand. I can't find my hand anywhere. Can I speak on this, please? It's Councillor Ian Hall.
Yeah, Ian, please do.
Okay, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody.
Is this a declaration?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I'd like to make a declaration of Cloakham Lawns receiving grant and ARC, the mental health charity, where I'm vice chairman. Thank you very much. I've not been involved on any other than the community groups. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Hall. I saw Councillor Hartnell flashing for a moment, but I don't know if... Yes, there you are. Marcus.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, just if we're making declarations, just to say that I was a recipient from the former grant scheme as well. Thank you.
Right. Can I make a declaration as well that I've received money from the former grant scheme?
Okay, that's Councillor Colin Brown. Thank you, Councillor Brown. I think that's all. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Everybody happy that that's done? Right, thank you very much for that. So sorry, Andy, I got you warmed up and up to the plate and then you were cut off at the knees. So if we may, back to Andy Wood. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, members. purpose of the report in front of you today is to mobilise a discretionary grant scheme and to particularly approve a policy and associated timescales for getting funding out to those businesses and organisations in need. I was going to quickly talk you through three areas, starting with background and context. Secondly, the analysis underpinning the development of the policy. And thirdly, some of the policy choices, including some quick comparison with what other areas are doing. So on the first of those, in response to the COVID-19 outbreak, government launched in March of this year 2 grant schemes aimed at retail, hospitality and leisure businesses and those in receipt of small business rate relief or rural rate relief. Funding was provided in relation to the tune of around £50 million to the council, and funding was deployed during April and May to the point where today over 40 million has gone out the door, so to speak, to over 3,000 businesses in the district. It became apparent though, because those funds were being deployed in accordance with quite strict government guidance, that a number of businesses fairly early on were falling through the cracks, so to speak. Those are listed in paragraph, or the categories are listed in paragraph 1.2 of the report on page 13. And you can see the types of instances where businesses, because of it was quite strictly identified in terms of their criteria, that started to not qualify, so to speak, for that, were ineligible for that initial grant funding. In response to that and the feedback that government was receiving, it was announced on May the 1st that a further discretionary grant scheme would be launched. Funding would be available, capped at 5% of the funding that initially are made available to the council. So in terms of timeline, some initial guidance was issued, some frequently asked questions were developed, and confirmation was received, as it says in the report, that the amount available to the council was just over £2.4 million. Importantly, that I emphasise here that whilst called a discretionary scheme, there were some nationally identified priorities. Those are listed in paragraph 1.7 of the report. Particularly those are B&Bs, those in shared workspace, market traders, and also charities as well. And those, had, as I say, have been ineligible for the previous grant schemes. The policy also referenced, and it's included, appended to the paper, that it would be advantageous to collaborate across functional areas. So the Devon authorities have produced a framework in order to help provide a consistent approach to deploying the funds across Devon. In terms of the second main area, the analysis underpinning the report, obviously there was a challenge to understand the likely shape in financial terms of how the funds would be deployed. In order to inform that, Libby Jarrett's team did a huge amount of analysis to understand the likely call on the projects, on the fund. Important to say that the initial modelling, if it was assumed a fairly broad interpretation of the national guidance and a flat rate fund of £10,000 per applicant, then the fund would be quickly oversubscribed to a tune of at least 100%, i.e. it would be over £5 million. And therefore, some further sensitivity analysis was undertaken to help inform the development of the policy, particularly around adopting more stringent definitions, but also in varying the amounts beneath £10,000 in terms of banding of funding payments as well. That has helped to inform the policy that is appended to the paper and is in front of you today. And particularly you'll see in there, we've sought to identify local priorities alongside the national priorities, particularly in terms of the retail, hospitality and leisure sector, and also those that supply to those industries. But also important I emphasise today, that won't cover every instance that's listed in paragraph 1.2 of the report. Lastly, just to highlight how different authorities have adopted and interpreted the guidance nationally, there are 3 key variables that I just want to highlight. Firstly, around priorities. So, for example, in South Hams, they have prioritised water-based businesses, which is understandable given their kind of strong coastal presence. In Torbay, they are looking to prioritise larger hotels. In South Gloucestershire, they've included nurseries, and in Bournemouth, a slightly odd one for me, but they've included insurance brokers. So you can just give a broad indication of the different discretionary priorities there. Also, in terms of grant payments, Cornwall have adopted an interesting approach that they have said they will give a flat rate payment of £10,000 to the national priority areas, and that is on the basis of quickly getting the money out the door, so to speak. Bristol have said that no one will receive more than £5,000. Again, there is local discretion to set that banding. And finally, around timings. So some authorities have already gone live. Most authorities have gone live. I think we are now the last in Devon. But if you take the example of South Somerset adjacent, they went out for a call for projects at the end of May and closed shortly thereafter. So they're now in the process of assessing applications. Important to emphasise, obviously, the policy is a means to an end in terms of getting money to those in need. And government will be monitoring and publishing performance data in terms of how that's happening. So just to summarise, Chair, in terms of the policy in front of you, we've done our best to ensure that is evidence-based in terms of understanding the likely shape of how that might be deployed in the district. We've tried to strike a balance between local needs, both in terms of national and local priorities, tried to ensure it's proportionate in terms of how the grants reflect likely costs and losses in relation to the current outbreak, and also to ensure it's deployed as quickly as possible, including a recommendation to launch tomorrow in terms of actually inviting applications. Just to be clear, inviting applications for over a 2-week period with a further report back to members as set out in the recommendation to set out how that first tranche of applications or the level of interest there's been to that first tranche of applications. I'm hoping that's clear, Chair, but I'm very happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Andy, for an excellent oral report and for the report that accompanies the agenda as well. Now, I'd first like to invite non-members of the Cabinet to speak by raising their virtual blue hands. I've already got a lucky winner of the Blue Hand contest who notified me beforehand, which is Councillor Andrew Moulding. Once non-members have spoken, I'll then invite members of the committee to speak. So if I can throw to you, Councillor Andrew Moulding first.
Thank you, Chairman. I've read the report quite closely and listened to Andy Wood's explanation. And I wanted to just highlight a few points within the report. I'm first of all looking at the government's guidance for local authorities, which says that it wants local authorities to exercise their local knowledge. And I think that's important that we recognise that in order to make decisions on some of these applications, you will need to report to local members so that you get a good feel for the applications you receive. And remember, this is a discretionary grants fund, so it's not obligatory, it is discretionary, and we must support local businesses. And my worry is, and it has been mentioned, that some of the businesses that we may want to support might fall through the cracks. And this is flexible funding, and we need to make sure that we target those businesses with flexible funding on a case-by-case basis, because the decisions we make on this fund will affect the livelihoods of a number of our local business. So it is very, very important. And my thought is that there should be a cross-section, cross-party group of councillors in a panel who can make decisions on these applications, similar to, say, the community grants panel that we have. So it appears to me that we have to work locally. We have to get a wide range of opinion on these applications, and the applications need to be allocated to businesses which sometimes fall outside the core sectors of the fund. And I think that's important. We may need to keep a proportion of the fund back to make sure that we do accommodate those businesses which are important to East Devon and might fall through the cracks. So I'm hoping that that will be considered, and it could mean that you have to make some adjustment, if you're going to go in that direction, to the recommendations that are before us this afternoon. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Moulding. I suspect that your wish may come true later in the meeting. I must apologise. I had meant before Councillor Moulding spoke to do the courtesy to our MP, Simon Jupp, just to read in his correspondence, which you will have seen came through at about 8:15 last night. And I'll just read that now, if you'll indulge me. Dear Councillor Arnott, firstly, welcome to your new role. Throughout the COVID-19 crisis, EDDC has played a vital role in supporting the community, from coordinating volunteering efforts to the delivery of the government's financial support to local businesses. Thus far, EDDC has performed well. The injection of £72 million from central government funds has been crucial in the economic response to the pandemic, but as we both know, some businesses weren't eligible for financial support for a variety of reasons. I have championed such businesses with the leadership of both EDDC and the Secretary of State at the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. Both have received a list of these firms from me. I can provide you with specific examples if helpful. My work with colleagues to highlight businesses unable to benefit from the business support grant resulted in BEIS providing additional flexible funding for local authority distribution. The new discretionary fund that has been provided by the government to local authorities presents a real opportunity to target these businesses. On behalf of the East Devon business community, I urge you to reconsider EDDC's proposed policy on this new funding stream and assess businesses on a case-by-case basis to demonstrate the flexible spirit of this funding. By focusing solely on the retail, hospitality and leisure sector, you could preclude many businesses in East Devon that employ large numbers of people and yet continue to have large overheads whilst being extremely limited in their ability to trade. I have spoken at length to the Chambers of Commerce in Exmouth and Sidmouth, and I know that your consideration of the entire business community would be particularly welcome at this difficult time. So you will have seen that I replied, I won't rehearse that now, but asked Simon if he'd like to come this afternoon, but he gave the very valid excuse that he's actually in another meeting. Let's look at my blue hands. Councillor John Loudon next, please.
Thank you, Chair. I was interested to listen to Councillor Moulding, who in part was reflecting what one of our MPs, Simon Jupp, actually said to you last night by email that you've just read out. And I was interested also in our MP's further correspondence today, where he sent in a list of organisations, businesses that he thought we ought to be considering encompassing within this policy. And I looked at that list and I thought, that seems to me to be a list I've seen before, and it was a list that was included in the discussions in previous officer papers, but it was also something that was sent to him by our chief executive at the end of April. So somehow or another, we've ended up getting back, in effect, what we sent to him, which I thought was interesting. We're being asked to consider everybody on a case-by-case basis. Well, if we had unlimited funds, that's probably something we could do. If we had plenty of time on our hands, that's something we could do. And if we had plenty of resources, officer resource, we could probably do that as well. But we don't have any of those. We've got 2.4 million to distribute. It's not going to go far, and we have to have a criteria. And we've got that set down in the policies here. We've got flexibility, we've got discretion. If you look, Councillor Moulding, in 10.2e and in 16.2 in the policy document, it gives you some flexibility in there. So I am pleased that we've got this and that we can now help further businesses who fell foul of the first tranche of monies. But I have to say, and I say this to our MP, Simon Jupp. And I say it to members of the Conservative group, who've probably got far more influence than the rest of us with government. We need more. £2.4 million for the district is very little. So, Councillor Moulding, if you could help us get some more, I'm sure we can accede to your wishes. But otherwise, I'm afraid we're going to have to apply some criteria, and I think these criteria will go some significant way to help a large number of our businesses.
Thank you, Councillor Loudon. Can I bring in now, please, Councillor Mike Howe?
Thank you very much. And actually, I want to talk against what Councillor John Loudon's just said, and support both what Simon Jupp said to you, obviously, and also what Andrew Moulding has said earlier. This criteria currently does not allow flexibility. It itemises out certain streams of business while ignoring other streams of business within our communities that are suffering just as much, if not worse in some cases. I have actually just found the email that Simon Jupp, you replied to, and I've just had a copy of it back in now. And some of those I disagree with. I think they're trading quite well, but then I don't know their finances or their individual circumstances. But the fundamental still remains. We are streamlining certain businesses and ignoring others that might be in desperate need that haven't received grants up until now. And that is the fundamental thing. If they haven't received the grant up until now, they should be able to be granted at least a chance of applying now and being assessed by others. Councillor Loudon is right, you do need a criteria, but you need a criteria that enables those businesses that need money to be able to apply for it. Not necessarily get it, mind you, because you still have that overarching look at it, but you have to do it quickly, you have to do it swiftly, but you have to be fair and across the board of any business in our community that is suffering and suffering badly now. So I commend what both Mr. Leader, you've said as chair, what Simon Jupp has indicated, although his email I don't think is quite perfect, but there we go, that's life. But we need individual ward member involvement in this, and we need a wider look at the businesses that can apply, but not necessarily get granted. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Howe. I think it was a recent leader of your party who said, and forgive me, I'll get this wrong, never let the perfect stand in the way of the possible or the practical. So looking down the list, Councillor Steve Gazzard, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can I say that I really do welcome this money that's been sent down from central government, but I do honestly think that we should be looking at the smaller businesses, and I would really welcome the setup of a panel and local ward members being involved in it, because obviously, as has been said, they're the ones that have got the local knowledge. So that's my views. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gazzard. As I'm looking at the blue hands at the moment, I can't see any. So unless any officers can see any that I'm missing, I'll move this now back within Cabinet, if that's okay.
Councillor Ranger is showing with a blue hand.
Sure, so sorry. Thank you very much, Henry. Councillor Ranger, please.
Thank you. I think the issue is that it is very difficult to categorise every business in our area into these categories, and every time you think you've covered a category, another business comes forward that says, I don't fit into this category. And so I think that is where the discretionary element of this grant must be, that element, the discretionary element must be a big focus, because otherwise every time a tranche of funding comes through, we're excluding businesses that nobody's even thought about. So I think it's up to ward councillors to bring forward the businesses in their area and keep feeding back up the chain, back up through to Simon Jupp, those gaps in funding.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Ranger. I'm still looking for blue hands. I feel like an auctioneer here. Oh God, yes, there we go, a flurry. Let's go for Councillor Ian Hall, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. We, as the elected members, are actually leaders in our communities, and we all agree with that, I'm sure. So let's us, with our local knowledge, be part of the solution here. I think if we actually had some good comms going out, and therefore we could feed all this information via us as community leaders, and then we can actually get a gauge of what is actually needed in different areas. Axminster may need X, Sidmouth may need something else. I think this would be an opportunity missed if we didn't actually look at this. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hall. Can I call Councillor Ollie Davey, please?
Thank you. I'll be very brief, but without any criteria, how can we assure the public that we are using this grant in a fair and transparent way? I understand that local knowledge is important, but we are going to find ourselves open to accusations of lobbying because it's, as in many cases, going to be the businesses who shout loudest who are going to be the ones who perhaps gain the ear of councillors. So I feel as though we do need to have some very clear criteria so that everybody is clear and we are transparent about how this money is being distributed.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Davey. Forgive me while I have another look. I've got some blue hands, but they're cabinet members, so I'll wait until we come back within cabinet. I think that's all of the non-cabinet members. Okay, good. Thank you very much. Right, so we better look now, I suppose, at the recommendations aspect of the report. I think perhaps if I ask Councillor Rowland to come in first.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to remind everybody that we're talking about a fund of £2.4 million. So we do need to provide some criteria. And I think with the broad brush approach that we are taking with the flexibility that's going to be involved, we will be talking about a significant percentage of the types of businesses in East Devon. I go back to what Andy mentioned earlier about the approach that's being taken by some other councils, where they're taking a much more restrictive approach. If I just remind people what Andy said, South Hams are talking about companies that are very much water-based. South Gloucestershire are talking about focusing on childcare, and Torbay for the larger hotels. And then you've got Cornwall that are taking an approach of a flat £10,000 across the board, and Bristol that are capping theirs at £5,000 per grant. I understand perhaps why they're doing it, but we have two issues to face, I think. One is businesses that desperately need this money, that we need to get the money out of the door as quickly and as economically as possible, and that we are taking a much more flexible approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jack. Can we go to Councillor Paul Heywood next?
Thank you, Chair. Well, again, thank you very much to Andy and all the other officers for the amount of work they put into this. In item 1.6, it's clear that this is national guidance aimed primarily and predominantly at the 4 types of businesses listed. It then goes on to say that paragraph 24 asks local authority to prioritise, and that includes another 4 subsets. So this is a fund that we've been given by national government. I think it's clear that it's welcome. Of course it's welcome. It's money we can disperse to help the local economy. But as Andy's pointed out, it's not enough, and therefore we rely on our MPs across the district to lobby for more. We require our higher authorities to lobby for more, and I'm sure they'll be very successful. Really, we've got to spread this jam very thin. And as Councillor Rowland has just pointed out, if we were to follow the model of Cornwall and just apply a flat rate, only 240 applicants would be successful. And I'm very confident that with good social media and dissemination of this out to the wider East Devon area, we will be vastly oversubscribed, because there are hundreds, if not thousands, of businesses that need support at the current time. Those who have fallen through the cracks, we want to support them all, but that's not going to be possible. And even our esteemed Chancellor in Westminster has said that we cannot support them all. But what we can do is apply a common sense, criteria-based approach to make sure that we help as many as possible. And I think this policy document goes a long way towards that. And I will leave it for others to come back on Councillor Moulding's point about engagement, Councillor Hall's point about bringing in local knowledge. Yes, indeed. But of course, what we also have is a time limit. If we had innumerable amounts of time and offers a resource, we could pick this apart and micromanage it. We don't. We've got to get the money into people's pockets and stave off individual bankruptcies, administrations, by getting the money out there. So we don't have the luxury of time. We don't have the luxury of resource. And needless to say, we'd be castigated if we did drag our feet in getting this out. So I think we have to be pragmatic about what we're being asked to do. This approach, I think, is very sound, and I will leave it for others to make perhaps some tweaks to recommendations to take on board what is being said by other members, and that approach is very welcome. You yourself said that this administration wants to be cooperative, collaborative, open and transparent, and I am wholeheartedly supporting that. We can't do it on our own. Every member needs to be involved, but simply for the sake of an approach that works, we can't engage with every member, or else it would never happen. You know, we'd have interminable meetings. So Cabinet will decide, we'll work with members as we can, and get this money out the door as quick as possible, and try and get East Devon back to some semblance of normality. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Heywood. Can I call Councillor Marion Rickson and then Councillor Paul Miller, please?
Thank you. I would just like to say that I welcome the comments just made by Councillor Heywood, and I agree with the points he's made. But I would specifically like to raise a question with regard to an amendment, because it's noted in the report in 1.2 that language schools have already fallen through the cracks, and they're likely to do this again. So I would specifically like language schools to be included in the local fund priorities, please.
Just unmute myself. Okay, let's bear that one in mind, Councillor Rickson, if we can. If you may have an amendment you want to think about. Councillor Miller next, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Following meetings with officers and with other Cabinet members this morning, I'd like to move an amendment to the third bullet point of the recommendation, which currently reads that prior to the Service Lead Officer for Growth, Development and Prosperity taking a decision under the scheme, that there is consultation with the leader, deputy leader and portfolio holders for finance, economy and assets and corporate services and COVID-19 response, respectively. While this recommendation reflects the need to be fleet of foot about this and get this money out as quickly as we can, as the Cabinet Member for Democracy and Transparency, I propose that we widen engagement outside the Cabinet and increase the group of members who are consulted to include not only the 5 Cabinet members mentioned, but 2 Conservative members, 1 of the Independents and 1 Cranbrook Voice member, to reflect the political balance of this council, and that these councillors be nominated and be put forward by their respective groups rather than be chosen by us. This proposed group of 9 councillors in total will be assembled to assess any applications which require that special discretion mentioned in 10.2e. Ideally, we'll have a broad range of councillors in terms of geography, so that as much of the districts can be represented as possible. But we have to be pragmatic here. The danger of increasing the panel by too many is that it could slow down the consultation process. And businesses and organisations that are in need, who have previously fallen through the cracks, need this money. So this amendment, I think, strikes the right balance between a broad consultation process to ensure the fairest decisions are made and the need to ensure this process is carried out with speed, in line, of course, with the priorities set by central government. So I would like to move that amendment and I'll see whether I think I have a seconder. Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Miller is proposing an amendment. I'm not quite able to distill that into a short form amendment myself. I don't know whether you, Councillor Miller,
Henry has it.
Henry, okay. Well, first of all, let me look. Well, I better ask Henry to tell us what that is before looking for a seconder.
Chair, I don't know whether you're intending for that, or whether there are likely to be other amendments coming forward. But I mean, it might be prudent if the cabinet sort of want to have their discussion and whether we can distill any recommendations at the end.
Okay.
Just give me time to sort of finalise the wording and then pick up any others, and I can do it as an en masse recommendation for the cabinet to consider. Would that be appropriate for you?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you very much. So let's come back. So let's park that one for the moment. I've got Councillor Marianne Rickson still looking to speak. Well, I've got actually Megan. Are you waving at me or no? Okay, very good. Good to see you though. Anyway, so can I speak to have Councillor Marianne Rickson and then Councillor Paul Heywood, please?
Yes, you asked me to come up with some wording, and so the wording would be that including language schools within local fund priorities with delegated authority to the strategic lead finance to amend the scheme accordingly. If these words could be added in as part of the recommendation.
Okay, so we've got a second amendment coming through there, which I see Henry noting. Councillor Paul Heywood, please.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed within the final document, the draft grant scheme document, which I think was Appendix C, under 3.4, it does say that businesses which are eligible for any of the following grants, and it lists them there, are ineligible for discretionary business grants. And there has been discussion between amongst cabinet members about ensuring that effectively, no business is left behind. But of course, there are other schemes available, and those businesses who qualify should apply for those. And of course, officer guidance and ward member guidance will be there to help individual businesses, if they are approached, apply for the right fund. But I am heartened, and this comes back to a point that Councillor Howell raised, that under 16.2 special cases, that sort of are, dare I say, almost a get out of jail free card. There will be exceptional cases, and Mr. Jupp refers to that on a case-by-case basis, that whilst you have to have a criteria, otherwise it's just a free-for-all, and actually the disbursement of the money would be nigh on impossible because everyone would wail in with their applications. So we have to have a form, we have to have criteria, we have officers going through that, and then at the end of the process, there will be a filtering of those that qualify and then those that don't. That's just the nature of the beast. But under 16.2, it clearly says, and I'm very thankful to the officers for putting this in here, there will be occasions when a business does not satisfy the above criteria. The criteria are not restrictive, and nothing in them shall be taken as restricting the council's ability to depart from its general policy if it sees fit to do so, bearing in mind the facts of the case. And that the BEIS guidance specifically permits local authorities to support individual businesses which are considered most relevant and crucial to their local economies. And I think that is a very important point, as is one of the final points in 10.2, which is in the event that the scheme is oversubscribed, and on balance, I think because of what we're dealing with, it potentially will be oversubscribed, that we reserve the right to vary proposed grant levels. So the work that's gone into this is very precise. You know, thank you to Libby for all she's done for the data modelling, which has been very helpful in helping us decide how we move forwards. And we've sort of, in principle, agreed these tiers of grants. But if there is an oversubscription, it may well be there'll have to be some pro-ratering. And we have to be mindful of watering it down too much, as I said, spreading that jam too thin, because ultimately it'll just be a meaningful, small amount of money. Now, to some businesses, £500 is make or break. For others, it will barely scratch the surface. So that's the reality of what we're trying to do here. We're trying to help as many as possible, but by doing too much, we can almost have the reverse effect, that we just antagonize and alienate businesses who say, what's the point of you giving me £500? So this is why we have to have a policy, but I'm very happy with Councillor Miller's suggestion to bring in other members, make it cross-party, so that we have that broad cross-section of opinion. And actually, I put my hand up and then put it back down again because Councillor Miller covered the geographic point. It's for individual groups to nominate their representatives, but it would be wonderful to have a north, south, east, west representation, because then we bring in the entire district from Hawkchurch all the way to the edge of Exeter, north to south, and then everyone is included and no one gets left behind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Heywood. I'm going to bring in two more. I've got waiting. Before, maybe we should have a look at the recommendations and make some kind of decisions, albeit amended. Councillor Miller and then Councillor Jess Bailey. Councillor Miller.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to be clear on what I was proposing by reading out my the amendment that I'm seeking, which is to agrees that prior to the service lead growth, development and prosperity taking a decision under the scheme, that there is consultation with a group of members comprising the 5 cabinet members already mentioned, and 2 Conservative members, 1 of the independent members and 1 Cranbrook Voice member to be nominated by the respective groups. Not proposing that there be a panel, I'm proposing that the 9 members from across political parties are consulted, because we need to make sure this money goes out quickly. So that's the wording of it, Chair, and I'll move that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think what we're going to move towards, Henry, is possibly the adoption of these recommendations with the amendments en bloc. Is that the direction we think we're going in?
Well, I mean, Chair, that would be the normal course of events if you're going to have sort of a consensual view across cabinets. If people have got different views, you might be in a different boat. But it sounds from what you're saying as if probably most people will be in agreement. So that's what I would recommend, that we, effectively you formulate it. I will confirm it for you, and then the cabinet can vote accordingly.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to use leader's discretion here and welcome my old friend Councillor Mike Allen, who I know he's made a good deal of effort to get here and would have wished to speak earlier. So if you'll forgive me, Cabinet, I'll just go back to Mike. Mike, if you're ready to speak.
Yes, thank you, Paul. I'm sorry about the screen. I can't get my lovely face on it, much for your benefit. All I wanted to ask is that your policy under 4.2 focuses in within retail, hospitality and leisure sectors. You've been debating Paul Miller's alternative to widen this. My very big concern is that those sectors are the lowest paid sectors and the least likely to improve the economic situation in East Devon. And I really do think you ought to reserve a small proportion of the grant fund, maybe 10 or 15%, for businesses that can show evidence that they have serious growth prospects. For example, might well be able to grow 20% per annum for the next 2 years. There are many businesses that have recently started in the last 2 or 3 years that have real potential. And this fund, if it's directed towards businesses that may well be failing, may not be the best use of the money. So although I do fully understand the benefit of ploughing as much money as possible into those three sectors, could we please have a fourth sector, which is for very fast growing businesses who really do need at this point, early in their experience, to have the maximum support from us. And they may well be technological, they may not, they may be with new products, all sorts of reasons. But if we limit those to a certain amount of money, it's not going to be oversubscribing the rest. It won't confuse things. It will, in fact, focus a small amount of money on key growing businesses. Thank you ever so much, Paul. It's very kind of you to let me speak.
Thank you very much, Mike. And I'm sure that all the points you've made will be borne in mind by Andy as we move through this process. I agree with your sentiment entirely. I feel perhaps we need an extra zero on the back of that amount of money to achieve what we would want there. It might not be the best opportunity to do that, but we will bear that in mind all the way through the process. Can I come to Councillor Jess Bailey, please?
Thank you. So it's my understanding, really picking up on what Councillor Heywood said, that we are very much operating within the national guidance. Although it's a discretionary scheme, we have to operate, with the targeted areas that the government have outlined for the scheme, and as such, therefore, in a sense, we are quite limited in the way in which we can manoeuvre. But the retail, leisure, and hospitality, my understanding is that these were areas where a number of businesses did fall through the cracks through the earliest government schemes.
Thank you, Jess, very much. Can we come to Councillor Armstrong and then to Councillor Rowland? Megan, please.
Oh, thank you, Chair. It's really just to agree with some of the comments that have been made before, particularly by Councillors Loudon and Heywood, about the amount of funding we're receiving from the government. And I know that we're never ever going to have enough money to do everything, but it is really important that we use this money in the best possible way, and that we do continue the lobbying. I've been of the opinion since the beginning of this COVID outbreak that it is not a local authority response entirely. It's not our responsibility, it is a government responsibility, and we should keep on asking for more money. So if there are businesses, and this money isn't going to go very far, we all agree with that, I think. If there are still businesses at the end of the day that are still suffering, then our MPs have to stand up and step up to the plate, and they have to ensure that we get more money. That's what our MPs are there for. We have to lobby them and make sure they do their work on our behalf. So thank you. We do have to have criteria, I agree with that. We have to get it out as soon as possible. And so let's just get on with it, basically, as soon as we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Megan. And as I said before, we know that our MP, or one of our MPs, Simon Jupp, will be kicking off his shoes and watching this later on YouTube. So I hope he hears that loud and clear, sent with great courtesy from us. Can I go to Councillor Jack Rowland, please?
Thank you, Chair. This may surprise Councillor Moulding and Hall that I actually agree with a large extent of what they said earlier. And we'd already recognised that we wanted to take a broader approach in this and get other councillors involved. So I take great pleasure in actually seconding the amendment that Councillor Miller put forward earlier. So I formally second that.
Okay, thank you. Henry, can you help us now, please? Because I think we've got two amendments and hopefully you've got the wording there. Are you able to help us with that? And perhaps we can then move to a vote on Cabinet to adopt those and the other recommendations.
Yes, Chair, I can. I think you will find that Simon Davey has got a comment, if you don't mind. I don't know whether Andy Wood's got any other comments before you get to that. Might have a bearing, but if you're happy to let Simon have a comment, and
yes, I didn't see his. Yes, please do, Simon. Very good to hear from you. Off you go.
Thank you, Leader. It's just a quick point. If we can add into the policies late in the day, I appreciate, but it's fairly simple. Just to be specific, if we can add under section 3 of the local policy in terms of the businesses must be primarily trading from premises that are situated within the boundaries of East Devon District Council. It's implied, but we haven't been specific. So if we could add that in, I'd be grateful.
Okay, Simon, can you, I'm aware of, there's the issue with market traders, isn't there, who are trading in various counties. What else is that aimed at to address?
It will be whereby you've got businesses perhaps that have a number of premises maybe, and perhaps a small element within our district, but they may be applying for a grant from another local authority. It's just picking it up that we pick up the predominant, where they're predominantly trading. And it's not double dipping, as it's called, in terms of a grant that's being claimed from another authority. We'll pick up on those issues as well by having that in our policy.
Okay, thank you, Simon. I better ask if there are any other members of Cabinet who would agree with that and be prepared to suggest to Henry that we include that as an amendment as well.
Happy to propose that, Chair.
Happy to second.
Right, that's Councillor Ledger and Councillor Miller on that. Thank you. Henry, did you get that written down okay?
I have. So if you're happy for me to take it through, in terms
Please
of the recommendation then, first bullet point is as written. Second bullet point is amended so that at the end of that wording there is included, but to be revised to include language schools within the local fund priorities. And secondly, within the eligibility criteria in section 3, that businesses must be primarily trading from premises that are situated within the boundaries of EDDC, with delegated authority to the Strategic Lead Finance to amend the scheme accordingly. The third bullet point is amended so that it reads as Councillor Miller put forward, agrees that prior to the Service Lead Growth, Development and Prosperity taking a decision under the scheme, that there is consultation with a group of members comprising the leader, deputy leader, portfolio holders for finance, economy and assets, and corporate services and COVID-19 response and recovery, and 2 Conservative members, 1 of the independent members and 1 Cranbrook Voice member to be nominated by the respective groups, and bullet points 4 and 5 remain as written.
Okay, thank you very much, Henry. Now, very excitingly, Henry has already advised me that we may be going to an extraordinary new technology to take the vote on this. So, Henry, do you want to talk us through this?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So next to your blue raise hands button, Cabinet members, you will see there is a green tick and a red cross. So green tick for yes, red cross for no. So you will be asked whether you are in favour of the recommendations, and if you are, if you can press your green tick, please, and if you are not, if you can press your red cross, and the Democratic Services team will announce the results. There should be a countdown clock or something like that so that you've got that moment of time. But if you can press it when you're asked to by the chair, and then we will confirm for you. Thank you.
Okay, so no pressure, everybody. If you can't find your cross or your tick, we can do this the old-fashioned way. But let's have a go on this now. So please, if you are in agreement with the recommendations I've just stated by Henry, would you please tick yes? Sorry. Right, so I can see that I've ticked yes. Councillor Heywood has ticked yes. Councillor Miller, Councillor Ledger, Councillor Ragg, Councillor Young, Councillor Rowland, and Councillor Bailey, Councillor Rickson, and Councillor Armstrong. So by my calculation, that is unanimous, but Amanda, you may know better than that.
That's a unanimous decision, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Henry, how do we formally record that vote?
That's it.
That's it. Done. Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for attending today. It has been an issue which has had to be dealt with extremely urgently by the officers, and we've had a good deal of engagement with them over the last 10 days, and I would like to repeat our thanks to them for the profound thought that's gone into this and the extraordinary hard work on top of the hard work they're already having to do to cope with the current crisis. I'd like to thank everyone, including any members of the public watching online, for taking part. However, can I just, as we leave, remind all those present that the supporting officer will confirm when the meeting is no longer being recorded or going live, and until then, your comments will be live to the public. Thank you very much.